Today, what we have learned how to use an Ajax service while implementing in a BPM coach. Today, we will learn another feature of an Ajax service, and we can use this Ajax service if you are working on a headless project, and even if you are working in some BPM project, there also we can use the Ajax service. Okay. Now, this Ajax service, the feature which we will talk about today, this is a completely different feature than what we have seen yesterday, right? Now, guys, there are different ways how a BPM process can be triggered. Okay, I'll give a scenario. Say we have a BPM application and we have, say, a process in BPM. Now, I want to trigger the BPM process. Now, the BPM process, till now, we know how it can be triggered. We have seen that. Yesterday, also, I gave one more example. If you remember, there is something called startable service, right? If I expose a human service as a startable service, it will be exposed where? It will be exposed in the process portal, right? And I was talking about a code called start process by name through which I can trigger a BPM process, right? Now, just think of a scenario. Say the input will come from the Java service. Okay. The input will come from a Java service and we have a BPM process. And whenever that input comes to BPM, it will trigger the BPM process. Okay. We will see this implementation today. Yes, we don't have a Java service. That is correct. But how can we trigger a BPM process externally? Okay. That we will see. Now, the medium, there will be some medium which will trigger the BPM process. What is that medium? That medium is nothing but an Ajax service. Ajax service in IBM BPM is a naturally exposed service. Okay. Now there are different things. You must have heard of web services, right? What is a web service? Web service, it creates a WSDL, right? And we can share that WSDL with some external team, say Java team. Okay. Now through that WSDL, Java team can provide the input, and whenever we receive that input to the WSDL in BPM, we get the BPM process. This is one way. The other way is we have an Ajax service in BPM where I have written some code, and whenever that Ajax service receives some data from some external application, say Java, it gets the input and it triggers the BPM process. Okay. This entire implementation, starting from the Java service and till the triggering of the BPM process, this we will be seeing in one of the sessions of REST API, where I will show you that I'm going to trigger that Ajax service externally from the REST API, and that could in turn trigger the BPM process. Okay. Today, what we will see, I will be creating one Ajax service. In that Ajax service, I am going to implement some code, and that code will trigger our leave application process. We'll see this implementation, and there is a specific code which I am going to show you today using something called map function. And there is also an API which I was talking about yesterday, start process by name, right? Very important API, guys. So this also I'll be showing you today. Okay. After this is done, if we have time, we will move on to the next topic, that is data change, validation, and dynamic visibility on a coach. Okay, we have seen that in a coach view, dynamic visibility till now. So how we can implement the same on a coach by implementing data change or dynamic visibility in the human service, that we will see today if we have time. All right. So now I want to create one Ajax service. Now, can someone guide me how to create an Ajax service? So maybe Abhinesh, if you can guide me how to create an Ajax service.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Actually, Karthi is here. Actually, Rahul, I had to refer the video.
Guys, don't always refer the videos for these simple things. Can someone else guide me from where I can create an Ajax service?
From services.
Services.
Service flow.
Service.
Service.
Correct. From services, we can create. Now here I have to click on the plus sign
Service
and this is the service flow. Correct. So I'll be giving a name, say here, leave application. I will not put a space in between because that's a pretty big name. And I click on finish. This create this Ajax service. I'll go to the overview. Can someone say me for this, which option should I select and why? We have this Ajax access and we have three options here.
For external, we should select first option, Rahul. Do not allow Ajax calls. When we are integrating with any external database or application.
Okay. So you are saying to select this option, right? So is it right, guys?
Third
No.
option from all users.
Correct.
From all users.
No, all users actually.
That
I
is
think
correct.
second
Allow
one.
from all users we should select.
Third one, Rahul.
Okay, a few people are saying the second one. I'll come to them as well. So why it is not the first one, guys? The first one it is not because we will select the first one whenever we are trying to create any integration service, right? This is not an integration service. This is an Ajax service, right? So I'm not going to select the first option. Now coming to people, there are people saying allow calls from trusted callers. Now this Ajax service which we are going to use, this is going to internally call the BPM process, right? It is not going to call some external application. So trusted callers is when from the Ajax service we are trying to interact with some external application, right? Now my Ajax service will not interact with an external application. Yes, some external application will interact with the Ajax service. So for that, I don't have to select the second option. I should always go with the third option, allow calls from all users, because the Ajax service will make an internal call to the BPM system and will trigger it. Yes, it can receive some data from some external application, that is fine. But when the Ajax service will make a call, that call will not be an external call, that will be an internal call, right? For that, we have to select this third option. Okay, clear about this thing? First option will never select for this because that's for the integration service. All right, so if you are good, then we'll move on to the implementation. Now here, I'm going to add a script first from the right hand side. And in this script, I'm going to write the code which we were thinking to trigger the leave application process. Okay, and save it. Okay, I will add a parameter. I'll add a variable over here, a private variable called location. Now, what we are trying to implement, what I'm trying to implement here is there will be a parameter, say location, and let it be, I'll just remove this, let it be an input parameter. Okay, say location. And let's think that this input is coming from say Java service. Okay, now this input is coming from the Java service. Java service is providing the location of an employee, and whenever we receive that in this Ajax service, what we will do, We are going to pass this input to our process, leave application process. And whenever we will pass it, we will also trigger the leave application process. Okay. So again, I repeat, this say the Ajax service is receiving this data from some external application, say Java. Whenever I receive location of the employee in this Ajax service will trigger the BPM process leave application and will also pass this employee location to the BPM process. Okay, this is going to be the entire implementation. So now I have added this as an input. The reason because the same Ajax service which we are creating right now, whenever we will have the session for REST API, when I will show you how to make an external call from the REST API to the Ajax service, that time we need this location as an input for the Ajax service. Okay, whenever guys, whenever you are receiving some data from some external application, okay, and whenever you are receiving that in a process or in some kind of service flow, then always we need to add it as an input variable. Okay, so I have said this thing right at the beginning when we started designing the process, that we have something called input variables, we have output variables, and we have private variables. So input always you will create whenever you are receiving it either from some external application, or I'm receiving this from some other process or from some other service. Okay, so this is my, I'll just rename this as EMP location, employee location. Somebody ping something in the chat. Sorry to ask, can you repeat the BPM process? So which part of the BPM process? I said a lot of things. Which exactly, what do you want to know? This is from Bharat Vaj Bhupalam. Okay, I'll repeat this thing again. So this Ajax service will receive the data from some external application. Right now, we don't have that external application to test. We will have the REST API session. That time I'll show you how to pass some input from the REST API to this Ajax service. And once the Ajax service will receive the input in employee location, okay, what it will do, it will trigger the BPM process and will also pass this input EMP location to the process. Okay, and as a result, what will happen? Whenever the process will receive the input, yes, I will write some code over here, which will also trigger the process leave application. So this Ajax service will do two things. One, actually three things. One is to receive the input from some external application. Second is it will pass the input to the BPM process. And the third point is it will also trigger the BPM process. Okay, so three things this Ajax service will do. Let's start the implementation. So here we have a script. Okay, and in the script, I'm going to write some code, that is where input is equal to new tw dot object dot map. So what is all this thing which I've written? Now here guys, on the left hand side, whatever you are seeing, right? I said this few days back when we were implementing a huge service, that whenever you see a variable which has been declared with this where data type, okay, always remember this is a JavaScript variable and not a BPM variable. Okay, so where input, so here the name of the input variable is, or the name of the variable which I am declaring here as a JavaScript variable, the name is input. Okay, and this is the data type. Now guys, where input, okay, whenever you see a variable starting with where, yes, definitely it's a JavaScript variable, but yes, you can assign any value to it. Okay, you can assign integer, you can assign string, you can assign some boolean data, you can assign any value. Where here, it doesn't mean that it only supports string. It can support any data type. It can support integer, it can support some boolean, it can also support string. So anything it can support. Okay, what I am doing here, on the left hand side, I did a variable, and now I'm instantiating a business object called map. Now map is an internal business object, or I would say, and some out of the box business object, which IBM BPM is providing you. Okay. Using this map object only, we can trigger a BPM process using the API called start process by name. Okay. I repeat, using this map object only, we can trigger a BPM process, and we can also use the JavaScript API which I was talking about, start process by name. Okay. Now this map object has got certain methods which we are going to see now. Okay. Now one method is used to map this data, this EMP location, with the variable of the process. Okay, I believe everybody is getting confused. So before I do something, let me go to the leave application process, and I'll go to the variables of this leave application process, and we have input. I'll just add one input variable here called EMP location. Now, let me explain once again. This map object which we created, it will perform two things. What is the first thing? First thing is mapping the data of employee location, which is there in my Ajax service, to the data, to the input variable, which is created in the process. Okay, so that is what this first map object will do. That is the first thing that it will do. The second thing is it will also trigger this BPM process. So one is passing the value from the Ajax service to this process employee location through employee location variable, and the second is triggering this BPM process. Okay, so again, let's go back to our Ajax service. Yes, somebody has some question. No questions. Okay.
Rahul,
So-
I have a question. Like we are gonna
Yes.
trigger it on the script, right? Externally. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this variable, I believe you guys know what is the meaning of this one. We have discussed this several times. So this is how we are instantiating this map object with this parameter. Till now, we have always seen that we always use tw.local.some variable name, right? But for this implementation, guys, whenever you are using the map object, okay, you can never use a BPM variable over here. We always need to use some JavaScript variable. Without using a JavaScript variable for the map object, we can never do those implementations which we are talking about right now, like triggering the BPM process and passing the value from the Ajax to the BPM process. All these things cannot be done. Okay, so always we have to, whenever we are implementing some map object, always we have to use some JavaScript variable exactly the way I am doing it. Okay, so this is the first statement where we are instantiating this map object. Second is, let me just write it down and then I'll explain. Okay. Okay. Now, what is the second statement that I've written? I have written, see, input, the same variable, I put it over here. And since, guys, we have instantiated input as a map object, which means whatever methods or whatever APIs are available for this map object, that can now be accessed by this input variable. Okay, so here in the second statement, I have mentioned input dot put. Now this put is a method. Okay, this put is a method of a map object, and it takes two parameters. You see, I have added here two parameters, and they are separated actually by comma. Okay, so this put method, it takes two parameters. What is the first parameter? The first parameter is the name, the variable, or rather, I would recorrect myself, the name of the process variable where I want to assign a value which I am trying to pass from this AJAX service. So the first variable which I have placed within double quotes, this is the name of the variable which I have created where in the process. You see, I created this variable EMP location. Yes, you might be thinking that till now we have always learned that a variable can be declared as tw.local dot the name of the variable. Always we have seen that in the coding. But in this case, why we are seeing that we have provided only EMP location within double quotes. I mean, that is the way this method actually works. Okay. So the first parameter over here, you have to place it within double quotes. And this name, which I'm highlighting right now, this name you have to provide as the name of the process variable. Okay, the in variable of the process, which will receive the data from this AJAX service. Now coming to the second parameter, this is the variable which I have created in this AJAX service, EMP location. Okay, for your better understanding, what I will do, let me just change this name to location. Okay, now you guys will be able to understand more. You will be able to differentiate between this two. So the second one now is an AJAX service variable which has some data, and this data I am passing where? I am passing to this EMP location variable, which is a process variable and has been declared as an input variable for the process leave application. So you can understand what this put method will do. This is just passing the value from the AJAX service to the process variable. This is the work of this put method. Now, you want to pass more data. Now it can happen, right? I want to pass more data from the AJAX service to the BPM process. Say I'm receiving some more data from the external application. So this AJAX service is receiving more information from the Java service, which means whatever I will get from the Java service, I will again pass it to the BPM, right? So you can add more put over here. You can add again input.put, and you can again just write it down the process variable within double quotes. And then if you have any variable through which you are receiving the data from the Java service, if you have such kind of variable in this AJAX service, you can again add it. So what I'm saying, so one information we are passing, if we have multiple information, we can again add more input.put and we can pass this data to the process. Okay. So .put method or put method is always used to pass some data from the AJAX service or from any service. This kind of coding can be written in anywhere. Even the startable service, which I was talking about yesterday, even in the startable service also you can add a script and you can write down this code. There also it is supported. Now, yes,
Hello?
yes.
For one input dot output, we can add only one value or n values. Rahul?
So here, like I am using only one input, so I can have multiple inputs also, right? I can have multiple inputs. I can even have some list of string. I can even have some list of business object. All these things I can receive, right? Now, if I am passing, if I want to pass multiple inputs to the BPM process, then in that case, I should have whatever I've written here, input.put. This also I can write again so that I can pass the new value again to the process.
Okay, Rahul.
Rahul, can you please go to the process variable?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, so got it, Rahul. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have seen how we can pass some value from the AJAX service to the BPM process. We know it can be done from put method. Okay. Now I want to trigger the BPM process now. So how I can do it? So I can do it using the start process by name API, And how we can declare it? Okay. Before I add anything more, let me just explain you what is the meaning of this statement. Okay. Now, on the left hand side, I have again added some JavaScript variable. Okay. And I have given a name of the variable as process instance ID. By the name, you can understand what this variable will do it, right? It will just store the instance ID which this API will create. Start process by name, it triggers a BPM process. And whenever it will trigger that BPM process, leave application, an instance ID will be created. That instance ID, I will store it over here. Now you can ask me a question that, Rahul, is it really needed to add this where process instance ID, what I've written on the left hand side? No, it is not needed. So I can even delete this part and I can only use this. It will work. But why did I add that one? Why did I add this variable? So that I can also get the instance ID which I am creating using this start process by name. I'll tell you the reason why we need it. Usually, whenever the Java service will trigger, see, a Java service will pass the information to BPM. And our work is we will receive the data from the Java service into our Ajax service, and Ajax service will trigger the BPM process. That is the entire architecture that we are trying to implement here, right? Now, whenever the Java service will provide us the information, and whenever we will process the information through the Ajax service, the Java service will also be expecting some information or some response from the Ajax service, right? Just think they provided us some input and that input is null or it has got no value at all. Say this employee location, which we are receiving from the Java service, this location, right? We are receiving this from the Java service. Now this location is null. Now, if the location is null, we will not be triggering the BPM process. Okay, only when we receive some data from Java service, then only we will trigger the BPM process. So I can create a response over here in this Ajax service and pass it back to the Java service saying that since location is null, we will not be triggering the BPM process. And whenever they pass some data in the location, we will trigger the BPM process and we will also pass a response to them saying that this is the instance ID which has been created. By doing this, the Java service will also understand that, okay, so this was a successful call we made to the Ajax service and which was an unsuccessful call. So if that is an unsuccessful call, they will go back to their code and they can see what is the issue exactly which is there in our Java code and which we not pass the location to the BPM Ajax service. They can rectify that code accordingly. Okay. So always whenever some external call is happening to the BPM, right? If some external application is calling the BPM, right? Maybe through the web services, maybe through the Ajax service, okay? We always have to provide a response back to that external application. It is always a good practice to provide a response back to them, okay? To provide a response back to them, I am going to add some output over here. What is this output? One can be some success message and the other can be some error message. Success message we will give them whenever this location is coming, it is not null, and we also trigger the BPM process successfully. And if the BPM process is triggered successfully, then we will populate in the success message that this is the instance ID and this is the response. So we'll add some response that successfully the application has been triggered and this is the instance ID that we can pass in the success message. In case the location is blank, in case the location is null, or we are also triggering the start process by name, right? Say if that call does it fails in BPM, it can happen that if we write a wrong code over here in line number 3, then this call might fail. So if the call fails, then also we will send them a response that there is some issue with the triggering of the process. Okay, so we'll see this implementation. So before going to the output and adding them in over here, let us first understand the start process by name method. Okay, so the start process by name API, you can understand the system API, right? So we know that there are different types of variables or objects that we can use in IBM BPM. One is local, which I said you guys, local is something which a developer creates. Then we have something called system, which is a system variable or system APIs or system methods, which are being provided to us by IBM BPM. It is not something that I have created as a developer. It is something which IBM BPM is providing me. Okay. And what else we have? We have EPV, we have ENV, all those things we have. Similarly, we have the system. And after system, what I have mentioned here, start process by name. Now, guys, this thing, never try to write this by your own. So you get suggestions whenever you put a dot, and if you put control space, you will get all the different methods that are being used or that can be used over here. There are different APIs are there. There are different variable system variables are available. And one of the API you see, if I scroll down, so here all the APIs are starting. And one of the API that we are using is start process by name. Now, guys, this start process by name, it takes 3 parameters. Like we have seen, this put method, it takes 2 parameters. Similarly, the start process by name is also a BPM method, and it takes 3 different parameters. Parameters here are very simple. Okay, what is the first parameter? It says name. This name is nothing but the name of the process which we want to trigger. What is the name? Leave application process. So just put the name leave application process, and please make sure of 2 things. One, you have to place the name over here within double quotes, number 1, and number 2 is you cannot do any mistake while naming the process over here. In case if anywhere the name of the process is wrong, then this call will fail. And if this call fails, then you know what we have to do. We have to send a response back to the Java team saying that the call has failed in BPM. Okay, so the name should be proper. It should be correct name, whatever name you have given for the process which you are trying to trigger from this AJAX service. Next is input values. This input value is nothing but this input which you have created, and now this input has this EMP location data. So you can see, using the start process by name, I am not only triggering the BPM process, but also I am passing the value which I am creating in this AJAX service. Okay, so input, now we are good with input. Input is this one. In what does this input has? It has the location of the employee, which I am passing. Where I am passing to the process variable, process input variable, right? So this you have to place it over here. Check authorization, it's a Boolean parameter. It either can take true or false, but it doesn't have any impact or any technical thing over here. It is not mandatory. So whenever you're making a call, whenever you want to make a call, if you're using check authorization, always need to put it as true. And if you don't want to put anything, you can also remove it. Still, this start process by name, it will still work. Okay, guys, any questions till now?
Yes, I have one question actually.
Yes, please ask.
Sir, okay. Actually, for the authorization, check authorization, in real scenario, we'll be writing a function, right? So based on the user role or something, we will grant access or something like that. That function will return a Boolean value for false.
No, I have never seen that ever in BPM code. At check authorization, we have to write some function which will return some true or
So,
false.
so
Mhm.
suppose actually, some
Mm.
only some user with a specific role will be able to trigger this process. In that case, actually, are we gonna write any function? No, right? Maybe
No,
I'm
no, no.
okay, 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 then fine.
They so guys, start process by name can be triggered by anyone, guys. Okay, please do not get confused with roles and everything over here. Start process by name is a method that will trigger the BPM process. Doesn't matter whether, I mean, it doesn't matter at all. You are a developer, I am writing a code. So if you want to implement something on the basis of roles and everything, that is something different that we do it from the task assignment, not from here. Here check authorization is something, it can either take true or false. If you're putting it as true, then the call will happen. If I put this as false, the call will not happen. Okay.
Okay, okay, okay.
So
I got it actually. The word, the authorization, I might
mhm,
have got confused. That's why. Okay, no problem.
yes. So basically it is a non-mandate parameter, so you can ignore it. If you are using it, then definitely you have to pass it as true. If you pass it as false, then the call will not happen at all. Okay. So this leave application process. Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Rahul, can you explain once again about success message and error message?
Yeah, I'll come to that. I'll write the code. That time I'll explain again. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll write the code again.
Okay.
I have not written anything till now. So whatever code I have written, guys, till now, these 3 lines. Any questions? Any doubts you have? Okay. All right. Now we'll come to our validation. Validation, very important. So using validation, what we will do, we will create some success message. And if the validation is going wrong, if the validation is not successful, we are going to create an error message. So what kind of validation we can do? First validation is location. This location which we are receiving from the Java service, does it really have some value? If it has a value, then only we will proceed with triggering the BPM process, else we will not proceed. So in that case, what I can write it over here, right at the top. Hmm, okay, right at the top, yes, we can write. Yes, here also we can write. So if tw.local.location not equal to null, and tw.local.location not equal to blank, and then location not equal to undefined. Okay, then only all these things will happen. Correct. Then only we will trigger this process. This we will not trigger.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So tw.local.success message is equal to leave application process is triggered plus it is not coming. Just a moment, guys. I wrote some code that went away. Right? Okay. Again, I have to write. expression not equal to null. So I'm not saying anything right now, guys. Okay. So once I have completed the coding, then I'll write. Then I'll say something. Why it's not coming? And now to the success message. Guys, please go on mute. Please go on mute if you don't have any questions.
I have a question. Rahul, like if we are creating the process ID, is it compulsory we have to create a process ID for like every processes?
I'll come to that just a moment. Okay. Yeah. So answering the question, instance ID, is it important? Is it necessary? No, it is not needed. So this instance ID, what I said here, even with this also, we can write start process by name. It will still work. It will still trigger the process. Now, why I am doing it? So that I can also capture the instance ID in the service which I am creating. I mean, that's a very good practice. Whenever you are triggering the process using start process by name, wherever you are adding this code, also add this instance ID variable, because whenever you trigger this process through start process by name, it actually gives you the instance ID in return. Okay, so it returns the instance ID. So that if you want to capture, you can add a JavaScript variable before and you can capture that, and later on you can just put it in some BPM variable. Okay, and if you don't want to do it, that also is fine. But the reason why I'm doing it, because this AJAX service will be used by the Java service. They will trigger this AJAX service and they will need the response from us, right? So we have to provide them some response back. So that's the reason why I added two output variables, success message and error message. So whenever my instance ID will be created, whenever the location is not null, success message will be populated. And if the location is either null or undefined, then in that case, I am going to populate the error message and not the success message. Okay. So that is the code which I have written here. So starting from line number 4, I believe line number 4, we all are aware what we are doing here. We are triggering the BPM process and we are seeing the input also. After that, what I have done in line number 5, I have created one variable, BPM variable process instance ID, where I am passing this value. Okay. And the sixth statement which I mentioned here, that since this is location is not null and not undefined and not blank, so that's the reason I am now able to populate success message, where I am populating process successfully triggered, and I am also concatenating the instance ID over here, right? So I believe you guys are aware of this thing. I don't have to explain this what I've done here. So something which we have also done in Java and the other technologies wherever we have worked on. And
Rahul?
else, yes.
Yeah, in the sixth line, can we concatenate using the JavaScript variable instead of BPM local variable?
We can, but somehow I was not getting suggestion. That's the reason I added this BPM variable. But we definitely can add this. We can definitely add this variable.
Yeah.
Okay, it can be added. It will not throw any error. Okay, so this is my if part. And now else, if the location is null or it is undefined or it is blank, in that case, I'm going to populate the error message, location is null. Now, this if loop, guys, right at the top, we have added this if loop where we have added tw.local.location not equal to null and not equal to undefined and not equal to blank. This entire thing we can replace with a single thing. What is that? tw.local.location. What does this mean? If this location has a value, if it's not null, if it is not undefined, if it is not blank, then only we'll proceed. Otherwise, we'll not proceed. So instead of writing that huge statement, which I had written initially, you can also replace that with this simple thing. Okay, this means if location has a value, then only it will go inside, else it will come over here. Any
What
questions,
if we
guys?
have
On the,
what
yes.
if we have multiple input variables?
No, in case of multiple input variables, then also we can do it. Say we have one more variable, say employee ID. Now in that case, we can write if tw.location, tw.local.location and tw.local.employee ID. That also is supported. That also we can do. So in both the cases, it will check whether if location has a value and employee ID also has a value, then only it will go inside, it will execute whatever I have written inside. Okay.
Rahul, do we have to learn JavaScript for this?
No, don't get worried. You don't have to learn. But it is always good to learn. I'm saying that yes, you don't have to learn for implementing these changes, but I would not say that don't learn. You can definitely go and learn JavaScript. That will be helpful for you. If you want to implement something out of the box, then definitely it will help you. I would also suggest people to learn things like HTML, CSS. So in future, if you want to customize your own coach, you can also do that. Although we have this BPM UI, but still, if you want some customization, you can use a scriptlet, right? So scriptlet, you can add the HTML, CSS. So always good to learn new things. All right, are we good?
We can assign the business object also, right, in the input variable.
Yes. We can also pass a business object as well. Not only simple data types, we can also pass complex object over here. And the method is same.
So Rahul, like we can add that objects, all the location into objects and pass it as a private, right?
Please come again. Sorry, I didn't
Like
get
Ayanat has said that we can pass use a business object. So as a local location, you had created a private there. So similarly, we can create a complex there and a complex.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes. So this thing,
but that will be a client side. It will go to the server, no? If it's in data. Okay, it's an object.
No, not that. So just think this location is a string right now. Instead of location, I want to pass employee information, the entire business object. That also can be done. And the same way I have done here, you can do it in the same way. So instead of here EMP location, you can understand we should have some variable in the process also, say employee information. And over here, instead of tw local.location, I can pass my variable over here, employee information. Okay. Simple variables, complex variables, all can be passed using start process by name. Okay. Now the thing is, location, this location variable, this location parameter doesn't have a value actually. Now we don't have a Java service right now which can trigger this Ajax service, right? So what we will do for the time being, I am going to trigger this Ajax service now from here, and we will see whether the process instance is getting created or not for the leave action process. Okay, and going ahead in our REST API session, that time I will show you how to trigger an Ajax service from the REST API, which is equivalent to a Java service. Okay, so there is a URL which we provide to the Java team for this AJAX service. By the end of the session today, I'll show you how that URL is formed. And going ahead, whenever we have that session of REST API, that time I'll show you how using that URL, we can test the Java service externally. Okay, so first we will test it externally from BPM side. We'll test it. We'll make an external call to the AJAX service and we'll see whether the AJAX service is able to receive any data or not. And after receiving the data, whether it will be able to trigger the BPM process or not. Okay, so entire thing we'll see in our REST API session. Today we will see if I am passing some input to the location variable, whether the process which we are trying to trigger, leave application, whether it is receiving the same input or not, and after doing the input, whether it is able to trigger the process or not. Okay, so guys, location, it should come from Java, but we don't have a Java service, so I'm going to add some value for this location, some default value, and you can add a default value in the script itself, but I will not be using this. Instead, I'll show you something that for testing purpose, whenever we developers, we do some testing. If I have to add some test data to some variable, from we can do it. You have to select this parameter, come to the right hand side. Below there is something called default value. There is a checkbox, right? Has default. Enable this checkbox, and within this double quotes, you can put a value, say Bangalore. So this is how we can add a default value to any parameter, whether it's an input parameter or output parameter or private variable. We can add a default value in the same way. Okay, so I'll save it. Now what I'll do, I will, if I run this service, if I trigger this AJAX service, this will trigger the BPM process. Now I want to show you guys how debugging is done in IBM BPM. This is something which you guys have definitely not seen till now. So this is an AJAX service. Now I want to see how the debugging will happen, how this service will get the data, will populate the data, and it will trigger the BPM process. As well, we will also be able to see the response which we are creating in the output variable. Okay, so how do we trigger or how do we debug this AJAX service? Top right corner, we have two buttons. One is run and the other is debug. Okay, so if I click on run, I will not be able to see the debugging of the service. It will trigger this AJAX service, and this AJAX service trigger the BPM process. Now, in case if there is any kind of error, if any kind of syntax error is there, that we cannot track if I click on run. That can always be tracked if I debug this AJAX service. Okay, if there is some kind of syntax error, some code which I have written which is incorrect, then it will definitely throw some error, right? So what error it is throwing, we can understand that if I try to debug this AJAX service. Okay, so I'll click on debug. Now you see on the right hand side, first of all, you see a token at the top of this trigger process, which is right now this script is active. Okay, now it will start executing the code as soon as you see on the right hand side, there are two buttons, right? As soon as I click on this button, it will start executing the code written inside the script trigger process. Okay, if I expand the data, guys, see location has a value Bangalore, and the other parameters doesn't have any value at the moment because the token is waiting on top of the script. It has not started the execution. As soon as I click on this arrow, it will go inside the script and it will execute whatever steps I have mentioned inside. Okay, so click on step over. It failed. Okay, let's see why it failed. So it says type mismatch. Okay, what does it says? Unexpected exception during execution, exception information, runtime error in process in script. Trigger the application process. I can understand this is the name of your Ajax service. It's telling that there is some error in the Ajax service. Now next is telling process item. So it's telling inside the Ajax service, which is that component where some issue has come. Trigger process is the name of the script where the issue has come. Type item. Just a moment. I just make this. Yeah. So type item. Where is it? Yeah. Type item internal script. The error is type mismatch, expected string, but found something different. Now, where the error is, it is also telling line number 5, input.put emp location. Line number 5. Line number 5 is this one. You see, it's mentioned here line number 5. So this is the error. I can understand why the error has come because we were using a JavaScript variable process instance ID. Okay, let us go back here. Okay, so let me explain the error first. Okay, so it's telling line number 5 has an error. This line. Why it is showing an error? I'll explain. This method, guys, on the right hand side, which we are seeing, which I'm trying to highlight right now. So this method, it provides or it returns the instance ID. Correct? That is what I said. Now the problem with this method is that yes, it returns the instance ID, but it does not return the instance ID in string format. Okay, it does not return the instance ID in string format. It returns the instance ID in the form of some BPM internal object, which our BPM variable will not understand. So here I got the value process instance ID, but whenever I tried to assign it to a string variable, it failed because the data which is right now this instance ID is variable, this JavaScript variable is holding or is carrying, it is not a string data. So I have to make sure that this is whatever this variable will store, it should be in the form of string. So I missed on something to do. After you have written this statement, if you want to capture the instance ID, so you have add something more. Somehow it is not giving suggestions, I don't know, but it should be ID. Okay, so whenever you put ID, so this would return the instance ID and it will store in this JavaScript variable. Okay, so let me try to trigger it once again. We'll debug it once again and we'll see if this error is there or not.
Rahul, we can directly map to BPM variable, right? Why do we need a JavaScript variable?
Yeah, we can do it that also, not an issue. Okay, it actually triggered and you see it gave an instance ID also. Okay, so here you see the instance ID is available. 154 was the instance ID which initially triggered, and then again I possibly triggered. That's the reason. So let me try to debug this once again. Okay, let me go to the designer. Okay, let me go to the inspector. Okay, so now it created this 155. I'm not able to understand why this is showing us 158. Okay, let us go to the inspector and let's see what instances I've actually created. So 155, 154, 153. Okay, so 158 might be some instance. Let me see what is 158. There's nothing called 158. Okay. So we have through the BPM, through the method that we were using, start process by name, we actually created these two instances, 154 and 155. Okay, so this is how we triggered it. We have added those things and we added those code and we could trigger the process. Yes. Coming back to the question which Kirtan asked, right, Kirtana? So use this question, can't we use directly a variable over here? Yes, we can definitely add. We can definitely add a BPM variable over here and we can get the value, but ideally we never do it. The reason being, whenever we get the value in this JavaScript variable, what we actually do, we first do a null check of this variable. And whenever we do a null check, then after doing the null check, only we assign the value to a BPM variable. That is the reason why I actually added this Java variable, but I did not do any null check over here, but I had to do some null check. Okay. So two validations we will be doing, one for the location and one will be after we are triggering this BPM process, we are getting the instance ID. So whether we really have any data or not in this parameter, if we have some data, then only we'll put this inside this variable, else we will not put it inside. And we are going to populate some errors over here. Now you can say that why in JavaScript variable I could have also directly used the BPM variable over here and did a null check. That also can be done. Okay, also can be done, not an issue. Okay. Any questions, guys, on whatever we did?
Or can you run again the process?
Mm-hmm.
Can you run again? Can you debug again?
Yeah, I can debug.
Okay. Can you get the result? I just want to check something. I just want to know the process instance ID. What is this 2072?
2072 is basically, it is adding. So whenever we create an instance, what we actually see, we see the last part, 156. 2072 is basically, it's since we are using the start process by name to trigger the process, it adds a kind of what to say, kind of identifier. And this 2072 is always associated with the instance ID. So even in future, whenever if you are installing this IBM BPM at your end also, if you're triggering the process, you see 207 always gets added. So it resembles the instance ID of a process, 2072. Now, going ahead and add, I could have added a further code which would remove this 2072 and the dot also. And I can only store the 156. That is also, it also can be done. Usually in complex projects, in projects where we are using the headless approach, we usually remove this 2072 dot. So that also can be done. But 2072 always resembles that it is an instance ID. Okay.
Okay. This 2072 is same for everyone or just?
It is same for everyone. It is same for everyone. I mean, 6 years back when I was using some other version of IBM BPM, that time also 2072 was there. It is something which is fixed for the instance ID. It will never change.
Okay.
So you see, I just picked up one instance which we created from that start process by name, right? And you see Bangalore, which we were trying to pass from the Ajax service, that also has been passed to the process. Okay. So put method, using the put method, we first mapped the data from the Ajax variable to the process variable. And then using the start process by name, I pass this value from the Ajax service to the process as well as I trigger the process. Okay, so any questions guys on today's implementation?
Rahul, why the instance ID is different from the instance ID we have created in that Ajax service?
So here 155 in
No,
the
not
Ajax
this one. During the Ajax service, we got like 160 and
yeah, I was also trying to find out why that was coming.
Rahul, I guess that is the task ID, Rahul. 158, whichever you are showing, that is the task ID of employee task.
It is not the task ID.
Just
Task ID was coming is 159. So how come 160 is coming? I was trying to think about that only. Like why it is coming 160. So 162.
Rahul, can we try one
Okay.
more instance? Can you trigger once again and check?
Okay, guys. This 162, it is showing as the inst ID, but it is not an instance ID. So people who are experienced in IBM BPM, they should have understood. So this is nothing but it's a kind of instance that the Ajax service is creating for itself. It is not related to leave application process. The reason being, it is telling process app leave application and status is running for the instance of this Ajax. It is not the instance ID of the process. It is the instance ID of the Ajax service. Now, before you get confused, all of you, this instance ID we don't require. Whenever I have seen this is generating because I am debugging this Ajax service. That is why it is showing me. 162 doesn't exist. It exists only when we are debugging the Ajax service. It doesn't have any relation with the leave application process. It is the instance ID. The more you trigger this Ajax service, it will show you that instance of the Ajax service which is created. Okay, you can verify this from the knowledge center also, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is absolutely correct. So this 162 is the instance of the Ajax which I'm triggering or debugging. If I run it right now, instance ID will not be shown for the Ajax service. Okay. Kirtana, now it's clear for you. What is this instance ID all about? I think the question came from Kirtana. Kirtana also, there was some other person who asked this question.
Yeah, Rahul, it's me. Rahul.
Yeah,
Vishal.
Vishal. Yeah.
Can you open the data?
Yes. So data right now is null because I have to go inside the script. And when you go inside the script, you see the status become finished. Now by this, you guys should understand that the Ajax service, the status of the Ajax service is now finished. It is over, it is completed now. And this instance ID is the instance of the Ajax. Now I'll just add some more points here. Usually, instance ID is only related to a process. That is what we have always learned. But in IBM BPM, actually, wherever you see the start and end event, okay, it actually means that it is also a workflow. Okay, it is not a process, but it is also a workflow. And that workflow, like we have an Ajax service, we have a human service, we have the different service flows, right? If you trigger them, if you try to debug them, not triggering them, if you try to debug them, every workflow will have some instance ID, and that will be showed here to you. Okay, if you still have doubt, especially Kirtana and the others, you can go and verify this, but this is what is correct. Okay, Vishal, did we understand any?
Yeah, clear, Rahul. Yeah, got it.
It's my mistake. I also got confused initially that why this instance ID is showing. Then I recollected.
But then Rahul, this is the instance ID you're passing to external system, is it? No, right? Sorry, I was not there in the middle of the session.
Can you come back with your question, please?
Yes, so
Didn't
is this the
understand.
instance ID you're passing to the external system via output of Ajax service? No, right?
No.
Okay.
This is only for the Ajax service. This is tracking the work or the process. It is tracking the Ajax service functionality or Ajax service. Whenever we are triggering the Ajax service or any kind of service, and whenever we are debugging it, especially that time, it is showing us that is somehow
Achha,
it
you
will
are
track the
debugging the
service.
Ajax service.
Correct.
Rahul,
Correct.
why you
Yes,
debugging the Ajax service? You are not running the application till now. Sorry. My bad. I came in between. Sorry.
No issues.
Rahul, can you run the service?
Yeah, I have also run the service. Okay, I will do it once again. So instead of debugging, now let me run it. If I run it, you will not be able to see anything. The reason I was debugging it. Okay. So now if I go to inspector here, now if I refresh it, see one more instance got created, 158. Okay, so see I triggered this process from the Ajax service, and the process got triggered and the tasks are also getting created. Okay, so that's how an Ajax service can trigger BPM process. Not only this code can be written in Ajax service, guys. You can write this code anywhere. It supports everywhere. You can write this in the process layer. You can write this on an instance service. You can write this in the Ajax service. But the main point of discussion was today that only through an Ajax service I can receive an input from some external application and I can trigger the BPM process using start process by name. And adding some more point over here, Ajax service is a naturally exposed service. Okay, I don't have to do any kind of configuration at my end in BPM side so that it can be triggered externally. Whenever we create a WSDL in IBM BPM, whenever we create some web service, we need to know about that WSDL a lot, like how the WSDL is getting generated, how we can add some operation on that WSDL. All these things we need to know. But Ajax service is the most simplest of all. The reason being the URL that also we create from for the Ajax service, that is so very simple. So I said you guys that I'll show you at the end of the session. Now the question should come into your mind that yes, the Ajax service is ready and everything is ready, guys. Now how we can trigger this Ajax service, okay, externally. What exact information I have to tell to the Java team once my Ajax service is ready, so that they can trigger this Ajax service and they can pass some information to Ajax service. Okay, so simple. The URL that is created for the Ajax service that we need to pass to the Java team or any external team who will be triggering the Ajax service is process app acronym underscore name or rather Ajax service name. First, you have to mention the process app acronym. Followed by that, you have to provide an underscore. Sorry, not an underscore, my mistake, @ and then followed by the Ajax service name. So for our case, what's the name of the process app? Let's go back and see what is the acronym here. Okay, I have to go to the process center. LAPP01, right? So it is LAPP01 @ now we have to know the name of the Ajax service which we created. This was the name, right? Okay. This is the URL which we have to provide to the Java team or any external team. So they will call our service using this URL. So see, we don't have to configure anything actually for our Ajax service. We just have to provide them that yes, this is the URL, and that is also very simple acronym, process acronym @ name of the Ajax service. If you provide this external team, they will call this service at any point of time and they can pass any input. Now again another question, how pass the input? Usually if it's a complex object or a simple variable, they pass it in the form of JSON. When we receive it, we convert that JSON into a TW object and we store it in our process variable or in our Ajax service variables. And then using that, we trigger the other things. We trigger the BPM process. We are passing the value employee location. Okay. Usually they pass this employee location in the form of JSON. Like this. And whenever we receive this in the form of JSON, what we do, we convert JSON into a TW object. And then using that, we can go ahead. Now, usually if the variable is simple variable, we don't have to do a lot of things. But yes, if it's a complex variable, if it's a complex object that they are trying to pass, say entire employee information object they will pass, that we have to get in the form of JSON. And we have to convert the JSON into a TW object. And then we need to do all those things, whatever I showed you. Okay. So don't worry, don't confuse guys. We will have a session where I will show you that this call will be made externally, how we convert the entire data into a business object. I'll also show you in the form of business object also. And then finally, whatever steps I mentioned today in our code, the same steps I will mention that time also. We trigger the BPM process using start process by name and will also pass the complex object data to BPM process. Okay. Any questions or queries for today's session? We did a lot of things. So expected some queries will definitely be there from few people. Okay, one more point, guys. I did not share any document yesterday because I was actually very busy in office work. So we'll share a few documents today on this map coding. I'll share the code with you guys. So, and this map coding, whatever I have done. And also I will share a few documents on the process portal. Apart from that, if I find there are any documents which are relevant right now for you guys to go through, then those documents I'll also share. Yeah. Okay, so expect few documents by this weekend, by today, and go through the documents, whatever I'll share. And there will be small exercise which you guys have to do. Simple. Create an Ajax service, trigger the leave application process through the adjustments, whatever we until now. Okay, just to make you guys understand, from Monday onwards, we are not going to move ahead with this leave application. We are going to move into a new use case, which I am going to show you first. Okay, it will be a bit complicated, not will be very simple, which we have done till now. So that use case I'll be showing you on Monday. It is on personal loan application, and we are going to start all our exercises on that. Okay, so leave application will be discontinuing, but please give me a demo of whatever we have done till now, and this demo will also include type ahead. That is, the type of leave drop down needs to be replaced with a type ahead, and also the leave application process needs to be triggered now from the Ajax service. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Rahul.
Okay then. Okay, guys. Then have a good day. Have a good weekend. We'll meet on Monday for our next session. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I will actually. I have one more.
Yes.
Actually, now, do you think actually it's really good to have the personal laptop and get it actually practice on standalone the BPM is rather than getting practice from the cloud? Just a neat suggestion. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, standalone server is good. Like, I am also using a standalone server from at my system. But whatever we are doing till now, at least if you don't have a standalone server ready, if you don't have your system ready, then you can definitely go and use the BW on cloud for the time being. But yes, going ahead, you will have some problem. You might face some issues like database session when you will have, you cannot configure any data source for the BW on cloud. Okay, that's a trial version. So you cannot configure data source over there. You will not have access to VAS admin console, as simple as that.
Okay.
So
It's good
for
to have
that,
get
yeah,
it installed in our personal laptop and get trained, right?
yes, absolutely.
Okay. And okay, fine. Actually,
Rahul.
and one more thing is like regarding your session, like we are providing the specific this link, right? Means to the external service to trigger, right? This is a URL we are gonna pass, right? Lab.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it will be the prefixer with the means the domain name where we host this application and all, right?
Nothing is required. That's the reason I mentioned Ajax service is a naturally exposed service. For that, I don't have to configure anything.
Suppose actually your service is got installed in xyx.com and some server name, so they have to locate where it's actually.
So that configuration, if any kind of configuration like that we done, that needs to be done as a Java service end. So I work for a headless project. Okay, I work for Morgan Stanley. It's a complete headless project, and this is how the Java team they trigger our service. So we are working every day. Okay, so nothing needs to be configured. We just need to provide them the URL. That's it.
So from there and they need to configure like those kind of
Yes,
things.
yes, they will do the configuration. We are not bothered about those configurations. Our work is create the Ajax service. It should run without any error, and I should provide them the URL query, and I should also have a proper response. Java should know when they are calling an Ajax service, whether it's a successful call or whether it's a call with errors. That they will understand whenever they are calling our service, and we are going to send them a response back. So this we need to take care. What configuration they have to do, all these things. I think any configuration needs to be done at Java end also. So definitely it has to be there on the same network, and such kind of configurations might be there at Java service end, but I'm not really sure what exact configuration Java team has to do. But we don't have to do any configuration from BPM. So that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, it's good. Clear now.
Okay. Okay, guys. If you don't have any questions, do we have any questions we can still discuss? I'll still